In this video, I'm continuing with dolls a little bit, and these are projects that I am doing or finishing up as I'm also quilting. But this is about rope dolls and dollhouses. Now, I already have a video up about the Sweater Quilt 2 and the smaller version, and that is made by putting a backing on fabric and ending up with roughly a 15-inch by 5.5 to 6-inch strip, and then sewing the strips together to make a baby blanket or a lap quilt or any thing you want that's about 30 inches square. Now, I can think of several uses for that. This is a Model 20 project. This can be done if you weave the squares with a potholder loom. This is a Model 20 project. So I've been thinking, well, how am I going to use the one that I'm making? I don't have 12 pieces of fabric that match. I have 10. So mine's going to be a little bit smaller. So I drew a little diagram of what it's actually going to look like when it's done. And then I did this. Now, what that gives me, now picture it hanging on a wall and 30 inches square with two sections that are vertical. And now, guess what it becomes? A dollhouse. So this is just one section. There would be four more, and then 5 across the bottom, because I have 10 sections. Then you take little knitted dolls, like I've been showing in my videos. You stick a piece of Velcro on the back, and this becomes a dollhouse. So whether it's for a child, if you want to make just one section and put a spool knit strap on it, it's a bag to keep your doll in. If you want to make the 10 or 12 sections, put tabs on the top, hang it on a wall, stick Velcro on there, and your child has a place to put their dolls at night. You could even arrange it so that it hung over the door. So, you know, if you close their door at night so they go to sleep, on the back of their door would be hanging their dollhouse. And I wish I had thought of these things when my son was little, because we had buckets and bins of all kinds of toys, and what a wonderful way to keep your dolls neat, and a way to also teach a child, put the baby to bed at night. You know, I mean, you can start early with teaching them to care for somebody else. So my lap quilt is now going to be a dollhouse, and I'll have 10 sections. So each of these spool knit dolls is going to get a section, which would be their room. I mean, the learning opportunities here are wonderful for kids. Plus, they're all knit. This is all knit. It's a Model 20 or a hand sewing project. It can be done by anyone. It's a great little project. So there is my dollhouse, which I'm going to be making with my Model 20 Sweater Quilt 2 project. Let me just move this out of the way. Now let's take this to a little bit of an older child. And I just have to put that down. These are rope dolls. Now, if you have a child who's about 7 or 8, when I was 7, I learned how to make rope at camp with a lucet. And here I am making rope. Now, when you're doing this, you have to pull your lucet stitches tightly to make a rope. Now, what I do is I make rope. And I always have, or sometimes have, leftovers. And these leftovers become rope dolls. Now, what I do as an artist, I kind of treat these as a bouquet of flowers, and I scoop them all up and I stick them in a vase, and they're cheery little bright colors that can act like a vase of flowers depending on the yarns that you have. But let me show you, they're very easy to make, the rope dolls. So there are videos up. I have one about using lucets. Some of mine are about making loosely luceted yarn to then use as a bulky yarn. But I do also include, you know, just the basic directions, and you just pull the stitches tight and you make rope. And then when you have leftovers, or if you just want to make a short length like this one, and where's my ruler? This is 12 inches long. So, and I have it folded in half. Now, here's what you do. When you make rope, the ends end up tied off anyway. So, with your long ends from your yarn, you cut the ends off. Now, you can either leave those a little bit long and they're shoes for the doll, or you can trim them. And you have to watch how much yarn you have. You then take your piece of rope like this. I use bulky yarn with 2 strands. So you take your 2 strands or your 1 strand. I have made them with 1 strand. And there you have a doll with 2 arms. And I tie that in a knot. And then I take another length, and I usually have to trim some off of one arm. Another length of the 2 strands. I go about 1.5 inches away from the actual doll body. And these aren't equal, so let me just... And what you do is tie this in a double knot about 1.5 inches from the body, and it gives the doll hands. Because what you're going to do, so there you've tied a double knot, and when you trim this off, your doll has hands. And then you use a remaining length and do the same thing to the other side. How much simpler could it get? Now you see that I'm doing this on the denim fabric where I have my 96 Trees quilt pattern drawn out. And if you take that same design and draw it in chalk on a piece of fabric like I have it, that's not really tight, but it's good enough. So there we've made a doll. There's a rope doll. And you can have a 7-year-old with a lucet who can make all their own friends. Easier than knitting Nancy where you have to sew it all together. You can make them in any color you want. You can use scrap yarns. Acrylics are easier to lucet than wools, depending on the wool. But you take this quilt design. Now this I've done in a 12-inch size. So this is, start by doing a square 12 inches. And you'll have to look at the video for the 96 Trees quilt pattern to see how I added it. But you take this, you give this to a girl, but a boy with a lucet, and all of a sudden he's got a playmat for his rope dolls, and they can be soldiers, people, school friends. This is another one that can just be hung over the back door. You can leave the fabric with a border like I have it, or you can make it just 12 inches, and he can roll the dolls up in that and take it anywhere with him. And you could do the same thing with Velcro, and at night they get stuck in the circle. There's room for 8 of them there, but it gets a little bit addictive to make rope dolls. They're so easy to make. So that can also be a playmat or a dollhouse. And you don't even, if you have a little boy who's very into being a boy, and soldiers and all of that, you could get him camo yarn, you know, or just green, and he could make his own green army men. Remember the little plastic green army men? My brothers played for hours with those. And he can say, with the lines that are on this, well, this is the good territory, that's the bad territory. If they're into that kind of play, they can do it. If they're not into that kind of play, then they can say, well, each one of these has their own room. We're all sharing. It's one world, and we're all the same. Again, the learning possibilities are almost endless, and this is with a very, very simple tool of a lucite, teaching a child to make rope, make their own rope, which is always good anyway. Lucites come in all different types. You can make your own lucite from a branch like I have. And so the rope dolls are so quick and easy to make that a 7 or 8-year-old can do it. From a girl and a Barbie perspective, one skein of Red Heart Classic pink yarn and you've got a ton of Barbies. So there's nothing negative here at all. And 2 ways to encourage children to help or interact with others, 2 ways to give them a safe toy to play with, as long as they have a kind of lucite that's not, you know, dangerous at all to them, kind of like this. All positives. 2 dollhouses and rope dolls.